Hey folks, welcome back to our program. We're going to do something a little bit different today rather than the standard old tech calls. I have on the phone with me what I consider to be an industry leader, if not pioneer, in the power enhancement side of the diesel business. Not something that we do a lot of. We do some of it, but this guy is considered my go-to guy to answer questions and bounce ideas off of. He is a wealth of knowledge, and he has a great company in Nashville called Diesel Performance Parts. You can visit their website, dieselperformanceparts.com. So welcome here, Mark Craig. Mark, good to talk to you, buddy.
Yeah, Billy, it's been a couple of weeks since we talked. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm enjoying semi-retirement, although it seems like I still work quite a bit. The producer was asking me earlier about our history, and at first I said, well, I've known that guy for over 20 years. And then I went, wait a minute.
You're wrong.
It's more like 30. And, we have these I can't be that old moments. But your history is one that you embraced the changes in technology early back in the 90s. And I believe you started in 94, correct?
Well, actually started in a true business in 98, but of course my forays and playing and enjoying, having a diesel truck goes all the way back to 1985, actually.
Well, just so we can bring the gas people in the conversation, are you still racing those antique Mustangs, or have you gotten too old for that?
Well, I haven't run the Shelby that I used to race. It was a 66 GT350 since about 2005 or so. Those cars got so valuable. And in vintage racing, the accident situation is rare, but I didn't want to find out the hard way. So sold that car eons ago. Actually used a lot of the proceeds from that to start Diesel Performance Parts back in 98, 99, and have been racing Triumph Spitfires, which is not a motorcycle. It's a car that most people don't know about, because I rebuilt some of those in the parking lot when I was at UT up in Knoxville. So I don't get to go like I used to. Too much going on, too much activities with a 17-year-old and a business and other stuff. But still get out there a couple times a year.
Well, you are definitely somebody that's got horsepower in your veins, no matter what you're driving. And I will say, for the record, Mark drives some of the nicest diesel pickups you can own. And you have been involved in creating horsepower for a lot of customers over the years. You have helped me and my customers do some incredible things with engines. And that's kind of the first thing I wanted to talk about, is a little bit of the industry changes. When you and I first got together, it was analog gauges, maybe a tuner package, certainly exhaust was, that was, and then air intake. That was kind of the crux of the business. And it's changed a lot. And can you kind of expound on that from your knowledge?
Yeah, you're being kind, I think, to the industry. It's not changed a lot. It's morphed into a whole nother thing. When back in the early 90s, you had the square body Fords making 175 horsepower, and then the 99 Super Duty came out making, I think it was like 205.
Right.
And everybody thought that was just, as bad as it could get compared to a 6.9 with a granny 4-speed that probably made 110 horsepower right. on a good day. And we were selling intakes and exhausts and getting people, 15, 20 horsepower there under heavy load only. And then the chips came out, the plug-in on the back of the ECM type chip, and you could get 50, 45, 50 on an early style Power Stroke, and then you'd get 60, 70 on a Super Duty. And if you look at that as a percentage, it's unbelievably high. And then before all that was over with, I mean, you can build a 500 horsepower 7.3 with a reasonable amount of money and a reasonable parts, and it's still streetable. And beyond that, you start breaking things. But now, if you go down to your local Dodge, Ford, Chevy dealer, and I don't know who's ahead at this point in time. It seems to change every few months. You're basically getting a 500 horsepower, 1,000 foot-pound torque engine from the factory.
Right.
And because of that, the tuner chip thing has really dropped off in the last 7-8 years because, I mean, 500 horsepower, it wasn't that long ago. If you had that in a Class 8 truck with 50,000 pounds behind you, you were pretty fat and sassy. And now you get it in a 3/4 ton truck that, weighs $8,000. And so most people they hook up to that 38 foot wind busting fifth wheel and run 75 mile an hour all day and don't care.
Let me ask you a question along that, because I got asked this here recently from a customer. Do you think that the tuner market drove the engineering for future vehicles, or were they going to do that anyway? Were they going to come out with these, higher horsepower motors, or did somebody at Ford, Dodge, Chevy look and go, hey, these guys are paying, X amount of dollars to increase this horsepower. We need to come off the line with that. I don't know what came first, the chicken or the egg here.
Well, I'm not going to guess that I do either, but I used to talk with people when I was on the phone a lot, and we do almost exclusively wholesale business, so those kind of conversations don't really happen anymore. But in the early days, everybody was into retail because there were no distributors. Myself and Russ Michelson out in Idaho were the first two people to kind of do that. Right. But I relate it back to the old days of the horsepower wars of the 60s and 70s. Mm-hmm. Chevy drops a 327 in at 365 horse with fuel injection on it. And Ford goes, well, damn, we can't let that happen. Yeah. So they come out with a Paxton supercharger on something. And then Dodge goes, well, we got to do something. And every year, even sometimes during the year, half years, split years, which we all love in the diesel business, they would up the horsepower again. And I think that's the biggest thing that caused us to go from 130 horsepower in the middle 80s to 500 in 2022, 23 is if you want to sell a truck, you got to have the baddest one on the market, or at least close to as good as anybody else's. And one manufacturer would up it, the next one would follow, the third one would come along, and then it would just keep cycling. Yeah. And technology, of course, with injection. Making 500 horsepower with a 12-valve Dodge in the early 90s wasn't hard, but it was filthy. To make that kind of horsepower, you just choke the world down with smoke. Now you can do it with a stock emissions legal truck. So technology has driven the capability to do it, but I think marketing has driven the need for the manufacturers to do it. And unlike, who would ever thought you'd have a Hellcat, a Chrysler, Dodge Hellcat, what is it, 807 horsepower or something out of, 400 cubes? That's crazy.
Yeah, that's what we call in the diesel side of the business ego-driven engineering, and where it's I'm gonna make something better than you. And well, you mentioned or kind of mentioned, that obviously federal standards have kind of come into play with the and that's affected industry wide. I can remember laughing when the suggestion was made at a diesel conference one time that they were going to have emissionized tractors. in agricultural equipment. I thought that's crazy. And of course, I've proven way wrong. Obviously there's that's kind of changed the industry, but yet in a certain way it's opened up other opportunities. One of the things that I wanted to really touch on you and really pick your brain about is what are some of the future things. And you and I have talked previously. There's a big deal going around. We've did a podcast about it, about the CP4s and everything that's going on with them. A lot of customers have a lot of questions. And you guys have done some innovative things. So I was wanting you to kind of touch on that, just to talk a little bit about the CP4s and what DPP, Diesel Performance Parts, has to offer.
Well, one of the best things that has occurred for our business, your business, anybody else that's in our market, is the CP4 injection pump. Mm-hmm. And I say that facetiously, and I'm throwing a big old pike at Bosch on it indirectly. Hope they don't come visit me, because it's kind of taken on the sales production like the 6-liter Ford did on doing head service. Yeah. They in fact, Dodge even has a program where you can bring your truck back. I forget what years it is, and they will convert it for you back to a CP3 because they've had so many failures. Yeah. There's a couple of 3 companies out there, S&S Diesel Motors being one of them. About, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years ago now, might be longer. Time gets away. They came out with a thing called the CP4 Disaster Prevention Kit, and it's some aluminum billet pieces they've made and some tubing and hoses, and they basically take the fuel and filter it after pressurizing, so that if the CP4 lets go and all the particles of steel and gunk that comes out of it, it stops it from getting into the injectors and into the rails and back into the fuel tank.
Well, let me stop here. I got to learn something here. So they're filtering it post pump, and before it feeds out into the into the system. What kind of filter can handle that kind of pressure?
Well, they originally had a Raycor, one of these plastic things, and you could, polycarbonate or whatever, and you could see the fuel. The fuel that's in the filter is not high pressure. They're somehow, and don't make me lie to you, I didn't dig into the engineering side of it, getting that pressure down in through the filtration side. They've now changed to a normal, what you would call a billet filter head with I think it's a Donaldson filter they're putting on it. But there's you can interchange that to a Baldwin or whatever. The beauty of their Donaldson is they've done tests on it, and the micron level is really tight. If you don't have that on your 6.7 Ford and the CP4 lets go, now you're looking at what's called a disaster replacement kit. Yep. And that's a big old box. And in the box, well, you got 2 options. Options 1 is box has got a CP4 in it. It's got 8 injectors in it. It's got 2 fuel rails in it. It's got a bunch of fuel lines and fittings and gaskets and all kinds of little parts in it. Basically, you pull a complete injection system off the truck, drop the fuel tank, clean the fuel tank, replace the fuel filters. Hopefully you didn't kill the supply pump, but if you damaged it, you'll know in a few months based on mileage.
Right.
And you replace everything from the fuel tank to the return line as the fuel comes off the rail back to the tank. There's an option to that, not on the 6.7 Ford at this point, but you have the same exact problem on the 11 up Duramaxes till you get to the L5P, which I think is 2017.
Right.
And then you've got about 3 years of Dodges, Rams that have the same problem. And that's what you call a CP4 conversion disaster kit. And it's the exact same thing I described for the Fords, except it's a conversion kit to put a CP3 back on it and not put a CP4 on it. Bottom line is, if you damage a CP4, not necessarily from trash in the fuel, but just because they're not a great, reliable, heavy-duty pump like a CP3, I mean, trash will kill them too, but if you kill it once, the odds are good you're going to kill it again. So why do you want to put the same pump back on the truck?
Yep.
Well, with the Dodges and with the Fords, you've got an option. You can go back to the tried and true CP3 that's fully rebuildable. Failure rates are extremely low. It's been around since, 2001, I think.
Right.
It's a good part. Now, there is now going to be an option for the Fords in the next few months. Again, S&S, same people I was talking about a minute ago. They're up in Indiana, and they're real innovative. I don't know where they get their ideas, but their engineering and their ideas, sometimes I look at it and go, that ain't going to sell. But they've proven me wrong every time. And I think they're going to prove me wrong here, too. They have teamed up with Pure Power / Stanadyne, who's now, Stanadyne has been sold and split up, and various different people own different chunks of it. But Pure Power owns a piece of that Stanadyne Corporation in the actual pump manufacturing. And they have teamed with S&S, and they've created a kind of a semi-miniature CP3 that'll sit in the valley of a 6.7 Ford, because the CP3 is too big. You can't get it to fit in there. It replaces the CP4 and gives you, we assume at this point, they've done a lot of testing, but it's not on the market to be purchased yet, a conversion to a CP3 type pump before your CP4 blows up on you. So I think it's getting close to $2,000 for that. But that's all the lines, the pump, that's everything you need to convert it. The disaster avoidance kit I was talking about, where it filters the fuel before if it blows up, it doesn't get back into the tank and the rails and all. That's got a retail price of $400. So people are going, well, should I just spend $400 and take a risk? Spending $400 is a good idea, but I'm kind of the opinion at this point, every CP4 out there just about is going to fail. Just about like every 6-liter is going to blow a head gasket.
Yeah, I was thinking more DS pumps for the Chevrolets, where the failure rate was over 100%. Before we get further along, let me mention to everyone, we're on the line with Mark Craig, who is the owner of Diesel Performance Parts in Nashville, Tennessee. He is educating us. We're talking about CP4s, conversions, and some options that are out there. I want to give a shout out to his website, dieselperformanceparts.com. You can check it out. You can contact his guys. They are top notch when it comes to this field. So let's talk scenario here. So if I'm a customer and I bought a used truck and it's got a CP4 on it, I haven't had a failure, and I call you guys, your recommendation, if I'm hearing you correctly, is we have a replacement part, but then we also have a kit that's going to be better than what you had originally. And correct me if I've overstated or stated something wrong there.
No, you're pretty much on the numbers there. We can get you a new CP4. We pretty much only sell the Bosch ones. There's some people out there rebuilding them, but the core attrition. I mean, if you sell 100 CP4s this month, 85 of them are not going to be buildable because they basically grenaded internally. So yeah, we can get you a new CP4. If you caught your CP4, maybe noticed low performance, for some reason checked fuel pressure, noticed it was down, and you caught it just when it was worn, but not blown up and starts sending fragments through the system, you can put another one on there. It'll restore your fuel pressure back like it ought to be, as long as your supply pump is still doing its job, and off you go. Just understand, it's I don't know, it's like a Hershey bar on the dash of your truck in Nevada in July. Right. It's not if it's going to melt, it's how fast it's going to melt.
Right.
And the CP4 is pretty much that same thing. If you can't afford $2,000 for this conversion kit on the Ford, or on the other trucks, it's about the same thing, like the Ram conversion, which includes a new CP3. That's $2,700 at retail, and I think the GM one's about $2,200. We sell fleece ones, we sell S&S ones. There's various brands out there, and there's some out there that they all work, okay? But some of them are a little scruffy around the edges. We stay with these guys because we never have a callback. We never have a problem. In fact, I can't believe it, but we've never had a call from somebody that said this nut, bolt, or screw was missing. These guys are really on their game as far as their products. And when something weird does happen, they pretty much don't flinch. They do the right thing too, which makes life easy for me, my wholesale accounts, and of course the guy that owns the truck. Last thing he wants to do is spend, $2,500 on parts and $1,000 on labor and then have some kind of mess. But if you can't do that, at least on the 6.7 Ford, get the disaster avoidance kit. Like I say, it's $400. You can replace the CP4 over and over and over, but you're not going to trash your injectors, your fuel tank, your fuel lines, your rails, and all that, and have to spend $5,000 on what they call a disaster contamination kit. That's new pump, new injectors, new rails, new lines, and all the labor that goes with it too. In some markets, like California, New York, where everything's higher than normal, that's a $9,000 to $10,000 fix on a 3 to 10-year-old truck. That's hard to swallow for a lot of people. 10-year-old truck, I think a lot of those are, in the work field, guys using them to make a living, and they ain't going to retire early as millionaires. So $10,000 is pretty hard to cough up when you have to, and they don't have a choice because they got to have the truck so they can make the money to pay the bills.
Right.
So it's an ugly situation for some people when that happens. So at least get the disaster avoidance kit on the 6.7 Fords.
Yeah, I can
that
say
makes replacing the CP4 cheaper, than doing the other thing. But just know you're going to replace it more times than you think, because if you keep the truck.
Yeah, back when I had the shop, before I closed my shop, we did probably 4 or 5 of those, what we call disaster jobs at the time, and I think the cheapest one we got out the bay was $14,000. It was crazy.
It's out of sight.
So these are some great alternatives, and I think that for you guys out there who have a CP4. Really would encourage you to look these guys up and explore your options. And, this is a case where an ounce of prevention is better than $14,000 worth of cure. And so
exactly.
Mark, listen, I appreciate your time. Let's make sure we plug your website and any other contact information, dieselperformanceparts.com. What's a good 800 number for our folks to call?
Or 866.
Yeah.
Yeah, 866-455-7788.
7788.
I almost forgot it. It's been so long since I've passed it out.
I know. We're getting older, man. Listen, I appreciate the time today. For folks out there, please, if you're dealing with CP4s, give these guys a call. It'll be some of the most informative, best chance to get a good, honest appraisal of what you need to do with your vehicle. And I'm proud to have had him both as a vendor over the years. Like most customers, vendors, we don't always agree on everything. That's what makes it fun. But
Sometimes.
I've had a good relationship with him over the years. Look for it to continue. Mark, as always, you've given us a lot of good information, and hope to see you soon.
Sounds great. I appreciate you, wanting to talk to us. Maybe we save some folks out there a bunch of money today, because it's going to happen. It's not if, it's just when.
Listen to him, folks. He knows what he's talking about, and now's the time to do something. Don't wait till you have a major problem. These conversion kits he's talking about are new to the market. You guys can get out ahead of it and save yourself literally thousands of dollars just by making one phone call. Mark, again, we appreciate it. Thanks for the time. We're going to close it out here. Again, last time, dieselperformanceparts.com, 866-455-7788. If you're lucky enough to get Mark on the phone, great. If not, any of his staff can help you. And we appreciate your time,
Appreciate
Mark.
it.
Have a good one.
Y'all too. See you later.
Bye.
Yes, I'm built out and bound to go. I'm gonna leave here running, because walking is most too slow.
All right, back to one.